right, we're live on YouTube.
Awesome. Well, I want to welcome everybody to our meeting. I don't have anything tremendously relevant to say as opening comments, except to the degree that you can, we'd love to have you on video if it's safe for you to do so and if your bandwidth supports it. And we'll try and keep everything moving. I know last meeting took us a little bit longer, but we really felt that there were some really important conversations that were happening and content that we needed to hear from, especially from the presenters from MYFS. So at this point, I'll ask Molly if there are any citizens' comments.
No, no citizens' comments.
Okay. And then I'd like to ask for the approval of the minutes from the January 12th meeting. So I need a motion to approve the minutes.
Motion to approve.
All right, so that was Sarah, and a second. Jess? Any discussion? All in favor? All opposed? Any abstentions? Scott's always abstaining from voting. So that carried. And the next item of business is correspondence. Molly, anything for us?
I do, actually. So Melissa, who I think she was here last week, she talked about her girls group and some of the work that they do. So we got a thank you note from Life Haven, and I'll just read parts of it. On behalf of the New Reach family of services, thank you for supporting our mission of inspiring independence for women and children affected by homelessness and poverty. Your donation of baked goods for the residents of Life Haven Shelter is greatly appreciated and important to our agency's success. So I know that they've baked for them a couple of times.
And who's they? Which organization?
The Girls United group that Melissa Boletto runs out of Daniel Hand.
Yeah.
It's actually two girls that are driving to New Haven to donate. That they
Wow.
do. Very nice of them.
Scott, what's the focus of that club? Is it just a girls group, or do they have a particular mission?
It's a girls group. I'd have to look to find out what the size of that group is.
Yeah, that's all right.
But I can look into that. Yeah,
That's okay.
it has been a consistent group. It's
My kids do
developed
it,
over
so
time.
I can tell you a little bit. It's about usually something like 4 girls show up for the Zoom bakes, or something like 9 girls that usually come to the meetings online. And they do anything that has to do with girls empowerment or girls education. They did a red flags and romantic relationships talk. They did the Zoom baking stuff. They do a few other things, anything that's girls empowerment.
That's awesome. Cool. We're now up to the treasurer's report. Andrea.
Hi, it's good to see everybody.
As long as we don't hear
You
you.
too.
Yeah, am I on?
Due
Am I
to
on?
a donation,
Am I on mute?
we have
That's mute, right?
$160 in the Sunshine
No.
Fund.
That's
And
the mic.
if anyone would like to donate, you can place your donation in an envelope with your name on it and place it into the lockbox near the Madison Youth and Family Service front door. I'd like to make a motion to approve the donation of $250 from Lenny and Joe's Carousel.
Pam, and then a second. Jess, and any discussion?
I would like to share that this year there was no carousel, so this is really a donation. You may be aware each summer, Lenny and Joe dedicates a day to our programming and donates the proceeds from their carousel. And some years, that's much more than $250. I think the most we've gotten was probably between $400 and $500. It's a really nice thing. It's a great thing that they do for the community. We so appreciate everything that they do, and they do quite a bit for the community, especially this carousel program. But this year, They didn't run it. And so this is just a straight up donation.
Any other discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Abstain? Not even Scott wants to abstain to that. So that one passed unanimously. Excuse me. And that brings us to the staff presentation. And Scott, I figured maybe you could do an introduction here.
Delighted. So this is our, what we refer to as our office management staff. When we reorganized in 2018, we didn't have really a kind of a hub for our office management. We did quite a bit. If you remember back at that point, for those of you who are, associated with us through the board, we had Luann Castrilli, who was her title was an office coordinator. So she did some social services pieces and backed up Wendy Larson for social services. And Wendy Larson, who was our social service coordinator, was also our office manager at that time. And Sharon Clark contributed quite a bit. I want to say, was it 17 hours a week that used to be at that time, Sharon? I remember that correctly. Is that about right?
15 to 19 hours, somewhere in there.
Something like that. But, and it made sense, for that time in our history that we were organized that way. And then when we needed to reorganize the department with all the retirements and the sunsetting of the MAID grant, we looked at this as a really important piece to identify and further develop. For us, just the internal workings, the helping, the data collection, just the operating of the office, coordinating where all our staff were going and what they were doing. We were developing more of a social media presence at that time and doing more third-party billing. We had brought that more into our office. And so at that point, we created this concept of this hub. And we did that really for the office because we really knew how it needed to work in the office. And I'm just going to tell you up front, so lucky and grateful that we had Sharon, who is already a part of our family, look at the position that we created and feel like it was a good fit for her. I'm not going to lie, I was hoping it would be a good fit for her, but we really couldn't create it for one person. We had to create it for what we needed. And so Sharon assumed that position in 2000, was it 2018?
Yes, it's 2 years. It's been 2 years.
Yep. So Sharon's title is our office manager, and Molly works under her supervision. So as Luann retired, again, some really fantastic luck on our part to have Molly, who learned of the opening of the position and applied. And my God, I can't say how delighted we've been with having her a part of our family and how quickly she's grown to take on things that even as we envisioned the position in the beginning, has really expanded. So with that introduction, we'll kick it over to them to talk about what they do and how they see themselves as a part of our program.
All right, want me to go first? Okay. So I've been at Youth and Family Services I'm on my 10th year, 9+ years. I'm in the 10th year working there. And I started out part-time. Peg Butler shared an admin position became available. It was like 15 hours, 19 hours, something like that. And over the course of the years, I did a bunch of different things. Mostly I did billing. I covered lunches for Luann. I did the director's report that you all see every month and the state report, a lot of statistics, and I was in and out. So when this position came up a couple years ago, the coordinator of office management, quite the title, I put some long thought into it and here I am. So my main job, I still continue to do billing, which I started from the very beginning. I do credentialing for new insurances and for the clinicians that we have. Our latest have been Optum, which is United Healthcare and Connecticut, TRICARE East, and Cigna was a big happy time to get that because they're growing in our area. And I've tried for years, and finally, we have 4 clinicians that are in the process of being credentialed for them. So that was great. I do eligibility and benefits, revenue, client billing, insurance issues. I have to attest with CAQH and Availity to make sure that they're up to date every 90 days. I have to upload their new licenses and the liability insurance. I keep all the financials, POs, and the spending that the agency does. I help with the budget, take care of donations. I handle the social media, which is kind of exciting. I did major in marketing in college, so that's been a fun addition to my job. That with all the numbers, no one could have told me when I was in college I'd be doing all these numbers, and I actually enjoy it, which is shocking. But the marketing, that's what I majored in. So the social media, I do have fun creating and designing and putting some stuff up on Facebook and Instagram. I've always supported the agency part-time and now full-time with the data, with clinical review that we just did. I helped a lot with that. The director's report, the status report in the past, now Molly handles that. And any department in the past that's needed it. I've done peer helper retreats when they needed it. I've helped with mentoring when they needed it. I've held MAID and social services, phone coverage. I've done the parades on 4th of July, which are a lot of fun, trunk or treat, the puppy picnic. And then part of my office management, I had a big part in cleaning out the attic, which if anyone saw the attic before we cleaned it out, it's now a beautiful room that you could actually do work in. It's organized and clean and beautiful. And I'm very proud of that. I've helped design or reorganize the office so it looks neat and clean and has some style in a very small, tiny little budget in a very old building, but I've tried. When I first started the job, on my first meeting, they mentioned that they were talking about getting a water cooler for the office for 2 years. In 2 days, we had a water cooler. So that was another like, woohoo, ask Sharon to get something done and she gets it done. And I do try very hard to do that. And that's about it. I mean, again, I try and support the office any way I can, keep it running, keep it organized. And I do get excited when the checks come and I get to report that our revenue, we're going to meet that goal. I do get excited when we get, anything that's new for the office. I'm thrilled to do. That's about it.
Sharon, I just want to say that I saw some of the posts that you've been putting on social media, and it's been wonderful watching the content that you're posting.
Oh, thank you so much. I am having fun with it.
Sharon, can you explain what the credentialing process is? Like everybody in MYFS wouldn't get a blanket ability to bill an insurance company. It has to happen on an individual basis.
Yes, that is correct. So basically, to be a group practice, you have to have a psychologist, you have to have so many clinicians, you have to have different specialties, and we're not that large of a group to be a group. So I have to apply for each individual person with each individual insurance. They all have different forms to fill out. Some of them are very extensive. It's been interesting for like TRICARE East was relatively easy. That's the Coast Guard insurance. That was relatively easy. Cigna, the application wasn't difficult, but then they would come back and say, we need more information. And then there's a waiting period. Then they come back, okay, we're processing. Okay, can you make sure that we have access to Availity, which is where you have all your different information. You have to make sure that's up to date. You have to make sure they have clearance there. And I applied for 4 different clinicians in our office on the same day. And the people I applied to later in the day, I got answers for first. And I'm still waiting on the people I applied for the same day, but a few hours earlier because of who's handling it. So whereas Medicare, we had to do Medicare for a specific client several years ago. And that took months and months and months of back and forth. No, you have to do this. No, you have to do this. And I'm like, I went through the application, I did it all, but they kept saying, no, this has to be redone or you have to redo that. we finally did get accepted, but it was a long, arduous process. So, so it is individual people, individual insurances, and they all have different processes.
Thank you.
Mhm.
But, it's a really important point to understand. The medical billing aspect to running a mental health clinic is really enormous, and you really can't without the administrative support. You really can't do what we do, and this was something we developed over a long period of time. We didn't have the financial resources to really go out and pay for consultants or other specialists who do this work. We sort of had to figure out on our own and bring on people as we could afford to pay them and get them more involved. And at one point, we had an external clinical biller. She helped us get off the ground, but we knew just for efficiency's sake, for accounting's sake, we had to bring it in-house. And Sharon's really done a great job with that, taking that piece on. And it's not just the third-party billables. She's responsible for all the accounts, all the clinical accounts. So we have people that are self-paid for their clinical fees. We have people with co-pays. So she's managing all of those specific accounts for all of our open cases. And I'll be very honest with everybody. As we had went through a lot of growing pains in the early 2010s, we probably lost thousands of dollars on not being able to track and follow up with fees, whether it was from families or from insurance companies. And sometimes with the families, it was, losing track, but also, our fee scale was one that we kept very affordable for people and sometimes free. So we've just done a much better job. It's a much more solid, more professional outfit. And the clients benefit, our families benefit. So where we had years ago, just a handful of insurances that we could refer to or get reimbursement from, we're now in network with 8, 9, Sharon.
Mhm.
In addition to having our sliding fee, we haven't lost that. We still have that ability. So if people can't pay out of pocket, we're an option for people at a reduced fee or even free.
Well, we've prioritized on who we've gotten credentialed with by insurances that people were coming with us saying, do you take Connecticut or do you take United Healthcare? So that was a growing insurance. So we got credentialed with that. TRICARE East, we had several people from, again, the Coast Guard come. So we got credentialed with that. And now Cigna seems to be, one that's coming a lot. So we've been trying to do that for years, but then it became a real priority because there's more people with it.
Yeah.
So.
Molly, you want to?
Sure. So,
Thanks, Sharon.
thank you, Sharon. So I am, I'm usually the first person that people will see or talk to at MYFS. So I do some screening with that. I do, I try to direct whatever person or call to the appropriate person. Every now and then I'm screening for a sense of urgency, who might need something right away or sooner rather than later. So I've gotten used to asking, actually, is this urgent? So, and most of the time it's not, but other times we have people who just show up. So the town is closed to the public except for by appointment. But we have a fair number of people who do come by who have specific needs. So, I was screening some of those as well. So, I have recently become part of the data collection team. I'm also, I do a lot of work with social services. Some of our clients prior to the pandemic, especially prior to the pandemic, but if we were making appointments, they don't all have transportation down here. So we have to ask if they have a way to get here. we still are asking those questions. Another question I ask all the time is if they have access to a printer, because if we have forms or like the COVID application, the COVID relief application, that's a paper application. So I tape a lot of those to the door for some of our clients who are applying for that. I have all kinds of important duties with, I keep the keys, I keep the Sunshine Fund, I take care of all of you on the board. I get a lot of calls actually about the food pantry. A lot of people think that the food pantry is run out of MYFS. And so I do a lot of referring out to the food pantry. Since the pandemic, the food pantry has gone to an online, you sign up online, and some of our clients have a hard time with that, whether they don't have access to a printer or a computer. But even on your phone, some of that stuff can get overwhelming. So I make a lot of appointments for people, at least to kind of get them in the door at the food pantry. There's a printed shopping list, and I'll print that off for people and tape it to the door, and they come and get it and go off to the food pantry. Those are some of the things that I do. I screen some people, like during the holidays, I screen them for if they want to be part of the Toys for Tots program or the Warm the Children program. I'll take their names and make sure they get on those appropriate lists. I think that's about, does that cover it, Scott?
Yes, I think you got a good amount. And that you kind of keep us all on track and sane and organized. The town switched over to a new accounting system. So that's been a huge transition, and Molly and Sharon both have been a part of that. Molly's collecting everyone's time cards, and now, where we are presently is we're between a paper system and a new online system. In the town, because it's in that period of change, still wants both to be done. So Molly's now tracking paper time cards that we have to reconcile with what people input into our new system. Again, like I think between what they're doing and how they're doing it, the positive attitude, the contributions to everyone here personally, professionally, it's I can't say enough about these two. They're our backbone.
You're here. Yeah, you may not be as visible as some of the other members that come across our path, but it's safe to say that the organization couldn't run without the two of you. So thank you both very much. And thank you for taking the time to be here tonight, Sharon. I know Molly doesn't have any choice. She's here no matter what.
No problem.
I'm happy to be here.
Thanks. Does anybody have any other questions for them? All right. Sharon, it's typically your choice as to whether you stay or you leave at this point. So we won't take it personally, whichever way you want to handle that. But I'm going to move on. And if you're just not there in a couple of minutes, I'll know which decision you took. We're up to our student report at this point, and Jake's not able to be with us tonight. So Darian, it's all on your shoulders.
Yep. Jake said hi to everybody, by the way, wanted me to make sure I said that. But onto the outline. So me and Jake had a meeting with Ms. Salutary, and we covered a couple of topics. One of them was the senior skip day. They had that the day after the Super Bowl, so yesterday, and kids kind of had questions about it. They weren't sure if teachers were supposed to be directly involved, and Mr. Salutary said teachers didn't need to be directly involved. As long as the student had good attendance, it wasn't a problem. Another thing we talked about was the student leadership, or our student council. Me and Jake were invited to the Google Classroom, so now we received the notifications in the meeting schedule. And we're hoping to attend the next meeting this coming Friday, period 3, but we may not be able to depending on how our classes are. And the purpose of that would be sit in and gain further understanding of what they do, how they do it, and possibly offer, gain support or ideas where we can. And the third thing Ms. Salutary informed us about was a student feedback form that he said would be sent out towards the end of the week. Be sent out via email. It wouldn't be done during class time. It's not like a survey or anything. It could be done on the student's time. It allows the student to share any problems or solutions for things like going on in the school. And he said it could be used several times. And he also said that reminders will be sent out so it becomes something that students have in their back pocket and they can use at any point during the year. One more thing about it is that it's not anonymous. So there can be back and forth communication between the teacher and whoever they're talking to. I wasn't really sure on who it was. And then outside of salutary meeting, in Valor, we have our presentation on Gen Z and how we handle different aspects of life. And that's set for next Monday. And our first presentation is going to be for Crystal and Catherine. And hopefully we plan to present it to adults and parents and give them a peek into their child's mind. That's all I got for you guys tonight.
Let me ask you a quick question. I'm going to make a comment also about the skip day, but so tomorrow we have a long Wellness Wednesday. I'm just wondering what the student, I know you're not in person, I don't believe at this point.
No,
Or-
I'm in person tomorrow.
Okay.
I'll be there.
So what's the student take on the Wellness Wednesdays? Still a positive feel and negative?
I think students are taking it really well. Sadly, I haven't been able to be at one of the like they take a certain class, freshman, sophomore, junior, senior, and they take them to their paw groups and they do something. Sadly, I haven't been a part of that, so I haven't been a part of that experience. I don't know what that's like, but the Wellness Wednesday part is in like people relaxing in the calf. I think people are really enjoying that. Me and Scott were talking about it a little last week about how we were worried about how students at home may not be getting the same interaction and may not be using it the way that students in school are obviously able to. So I meant to bring that up to Ms. Saiter. I wasn't able to. But as far as being in school Wellness Wednesday, I think everybody's loving it, especially when Mr. Becker's making like all sorts of juices and cookies for everybody. So
sounds good. Just a quick take on Senior Skip Day, just so that nobody on this call is misinformed on that. There is no such thing as Senior Skip Day. There is no school sanctioned event. Mr. Salutary got a call from a parent today who was upset that his daughter wasn't properly notified by the school that today was Senior Skip Day. There is no Senior Skip Day. So so I just want everybody to understand that it's if you choose to keep your child home from school, excuse me, not your kid, that's between you and your child, but there's teachers can accommodate it. If they know a lot of students are out, they may change their lesson plan, they may not. There's really very little planning that happens around these things because we often don't even know about them in advance. So I just want to say
David, thank you for clarifying that because I was very confused that maybe something had changed in the past year, that there was a sanction day.
No,
Thank you.
I've been doing this 21 years. This is about the earliest Senior Skip Day I recall. So, kids are more
It's a
mature
national
these days.
holiday, isn't it, Kathleen?
It is.
I will tell you, dropping off my kid at school Monday morning, I was trying to figure out why no one was at school. He literally walked in, empty parking lot. There was no one outside. It was bizarre. And then I figured it out.
I think that these seniors have missed out on so much that they almost even missed out on their senior skip day because it was almost a snow day.
I know.
Yes.
It's like, how dare we have like the superintendent canceled school on a senior skip day? That's just so wrong of him.
I do have to say that the kids did a decent job trying to notify each other and make it public for everyone on social media so that everyone that was possibly could be notified was notified. It wasn't just certain social groups.
I feel sorry for the kid that missed the memo. That's terrible.
Thank you, Scott, for the note. So I did have a couple of seniors who must not have gotten the memo, but it is what it is. So anybody have any questions for Darian?
Nice report, Darian.
It was
very organized.
Thank you.
So at this point, we move over to Scott's director's report.
What a wonderful topic to have to talk about Senior Skip Day. Was that not the most normal moment that we've had on any meeting board related to anything school? Thank God we need more of that. Not more Senior Skip Days because that shouldn't be too much. And And again, add my thanks to good job, Darian, with your report. So I have a few things I'd like to go through tonight. A couple of sort of update FYIs. We are providing QPR training into the community. We're doing 2 online trainings that are aimed mostly at adults. You know, it wouldn't be inappropriate for a young person to register and be a part of these, but we are aiming these 2 into the community squarely at adults and parents. So not dates that are hard to remember. February 18th, which is next Thursday, and then we'll do a second one March 18th, which is also a Thursday, as those 2 months line up very nicely. I believe, I want to say 6:30. We just shared it online. Sharon, do you remember the time? Was it 6:30?
I think so. I can make you small and look it up. How about that?
Yeah, please. That's never something anyone wants to hear. But yes, so those 2 dates, you can sign up online if any of you are interested. Certainly share that with other parents. We are limiting the amount of people that we want in this. That just allows us to have all the faces on the screen, allows for a little bit more dialogue, which we think is very important. I think we're going up to about 20 people that we want to train, and I know the 18th is already half full, and we are thinking it's going to fill up. So I want you to be aware of that. We continue to have ongoing dialogues with the school administrators, in particular, Mr. Salutary and Catherine Hart. Catherine actually reached out to us this week wanting some input and some of our staff time to help develop some presentations to parents on some of the trends that they're seeing at the middle school, ongoing conversations with Principal Salutary around having our staff show up at PTO meetings. And I am going to join. I know that we had Melissa and a couple of students that were supposed to present in the PTO, which I think Jessica noted was canceled last week and then got canceled again today. So that's going to move to March. And I'm going to be talking along with I believe it's the executive committee to the Daniel Hand PTO, and we'll talk with them about doing a specific QPR for the Daniel Hand PTO. And I think the question is, does that fit as a part of maybe a PTO meeting, or might it be more appropriate to put that in a different time slot? So that's going to be happening next, I believe, in early March. I don't know if people saw the post today, but our peer helper program was running a hearts campaign. There's a great article in the Shoreline Times. We posted it. Please, in your free time, take a look at that. It's a wonderful program and a great utilization by our peer helpers. Want to talk to you about our board and staff enhancement event. So this is something that we've done every year, I think, for the past 5 years. We take one night, we have all of our staff and all of our board, and we do an earlier board meeting. And we have everyone in one room, and we pick some themes, and depending on which year, we've kind of focused in on maybe a trend. And done more breakout groups and icebreaker kind of activities. It's really just I think it's been an informative night. I think it's been a fun night. We feed everybody. We have what's cooking, provide the catering. And as we looked at this year, knowing we're still in the crappy pandemic, we thought about how we would handle it this year. And I think everyone's aware, but the last couple of years, we've also done an awards night. We've developed a concept, and we've been able to honor mostly youth, but youth and adults in the community that have participated in our programming, also have done things that maybe either on their own or connected to us in volunteerism. And we've made that also a nice night. And what I think has happened as we've had both these, one that has occurred during a board meeting, which is the enrichment, and the awards night happening on a separate night, I think it's been tough sometimes to get to board members the opportunity to be a part of the awards. And so this year, knowing that we don't even know how we're going to be doing both, we decided to combine them. So our May meeting, and this is your 3-month advance warning. Our May meeting is going to be early. It'll be a 6 o'clock meeting, and it will be a combined awards night and enrichment night. And we actually think having everyone a part of the awards night is going to be an enriching experience just in and of itself. We have some ideas how we can integrate some of the programming that we would typically do in an enrichment night and, do our awards and have a really good experience for everybody. So want to give everyone a heads up on that. You'll hear more as we get closer, but please, mark your calendars. We are, I think, I don't know how pie in the sky this is, but we are not ruling out that we could maybe do something in person, likely outside, would still, the idea that maybe if enough people or all of us are vaccinated and comfortable, that maybe that's something we could do in person. We're likely going to do it virtual, but why not keep hope alive, right? There's nothing wrong with that. We still got a couple of months. I don't know if there's any questions or thoughts on that piece from anybody. Okay. So some of you were on the call earlier, this meeting earlier. We did identify a focus group for our clinical study. We do have the final report of that study and very favorable for our model in general. I'm really looking forward to getting into the details on that and really want everyone's feedback. I'm not sure how much I can or should share with everybody without knowing, some guidance from the selectman's office. So I'm waiting for that. And looking forward to it. So everyone's informed. Our focus group is including Jessica, Beth, and Sarah, and anyone else who wants to attend when we get to that meeting. So a couple of thoughts that we've been working on for quite a while. There's a lot that we do here in terms of our programming, and we're aware that things like the data that we collect, what we report in terms of outcomes, not just to you all, but to, we have to report things to the state that connect to our grants. Obviously, we have things that we want to be able to report into the community. And over the years, we've known where we've had issues and problems and collecting the data and getting really the right data that tells the story. And I'll use that way of explaining this because I really think that's what we're after. I think, our numbers should be understandable. They should relate well. People should know, but just by looking at them, pretty much infer what they mean and what they are. And again, because I don't lie, or at least not often, I don't think our numbers do a really good job at that all the time. And it's been a really I'm going to say a high priority here to make that better. One of the criticisms that will be very clear in the clinic study will be that we need better data collection and we need to be able to tell our story a little bit better. Now, I don't think we're horrible. I think that and we are collecting quite a bit of data. I'm just not sure that it's as understandable, and I'm not sure that it always tells the story that we want it to. And that's very frustrating for me as well as our staff. Even as a high priority, it's very hard to get to that because it's such a heavy lift. It means changing our paperwork. It means getting staff, counting, and filling out, different forms that collect the data that we want. And so we've been in that process for quite some time. And I would like just to share with everybody a couple of pieces that relate to that. We have, if you look at your director's report, and I'm going to screen share, or at least I'm going to make an attempt to screen share. Let's see. So you all get this form, our director's report, and you get it monthly. And I won't actually ask for you to raise your hand if you read this every single month. because I doubt that you do. And that's not the worst thing in the world. If you skim through it, if there's things that you wonder about or just are curious about, you're more likely to look into it. We don't emphasize this much in the board meeting. This is just our report out to all of you as to what we're doing. And this is one format that, you know, we are presently changing and again, really want to change. And if you looked just at our clinical services, if you were wondering like what we were doing and how we were doing it, would you really know, you know, what's the difference between our outpatient clinic and our scope sessions and school-based counseling, all this stuff that's in here. We report out on our outreach and inquiries. Our inquiries, by the way, are defined as requests for clinical services. And all of these numbers, we know what they are, and they're very meaningful to us in a lot of ways. I don't know that you all would know what they are. I think one thing that we have worked on that I think is better is this particular chart. And we have ideas of making it, I think, a little bit more clear. But this is a chart that's based on the reason for referral. So these are all the people that we're doing outreach for and inquiries. And so, you know, the difference is an inquiry is typically a parent, but somebody who is directly asking us for clinical services. So that's mostly people calling us saying, you know, we're looking for a clinician or therapy for our kid. In some cases that can happen in the school, and most of that is, you know, coming into our agency, and that's when somebody's asking specifically for therapy, that's how that's counted. Outreach is a little bit more amorphous. So that outreach could be someone asking us for services or for help, but not necessarily asking us for therapy. So that could be a parent calling us and saying, you know, I don't know how to handle this problem. Can you help me walk through it? That could be a student who walks into one of our counseling offices. That could be somebody who's involved in another part of our programming and is asking for help. And that's, and I'll talk a little bit more about how we look at that in a second, but that's a little bit of what those numbers mean. And since it's rare that somebody calls and asks for help for one thing. Usually there is an identifiable presenting problem that we can you know, help define through a conversation with a parent, you know. But what often happens is, you know, my child is struggling at school, and tell us a little bit more about that. Well, you know, their mood has changed, and I'm worried about that, you know, maybe that they're depressed, or I've seen changes in their eating or their concentration. So like any of these phone calls, you're not getting just one thing, you're getting a little bit more information in terms of what might be the issue. And so like we will collect a reason for a referral, but often there's several reasons. This chart at least gives you an idea and a comparison, you know, of how that maybe relates to a trend in the current fiscal year. So, you know, just looking at this chart, you can see of the outreach and inquiries in the month of November, there were 4 on average. If you're looking at an average over the entire fiscal year, that the numbers tend to average out higher. And at a glance, it just tells you whether this is sort of a little different than the trend during the year, or whether you're pretty much on par, which if you look down here, mood regulation, suicidal behavior are both pretty much on par on average for what you would see throughout the year. We like this. We want to change, and we're changing some things that we're collecting now to help identify a primary reason for referral. So eventually we will have, in future director's reports, a singular primary reason. And that took a little talking, you know, because like, you know, it's again, like it's never one thing. So like telling someone you really got to nail down what your primary reason is, it took a little doing, but I think, you know, we're going to get there. And we're still going to collect this data. It's just that we're going to have a clearer idea of more of what we feel is the primary. So I'm going to move you into the second page, and I'm not going through this whole thing page by page. I wouldn't do that to you all. For one, note this lifelines. I want to talk to you a little bit more about what that means. We're collecting specific data on this. And if you read through, you'll see where our programs are running. I had one of you, I won't say who, but really appreciated the question because it made me think a little bit deeper on this. There's a question about the reach. How do we know that we're reaching everybody? So just looking, these are numbers as of November, so they don't reflect, everything that we've done now really into the winter. These are programs, so you'll see numbers, you'll see how many students, like like the peer advocate meeting, how many students total that have been involved, how many new, how many attended, it being in Zoom. And then the fiscal year peer advocates, how many in total were part of alumni meetings. And that also tells you the staff that are connected to them. Where you see utilizations, those are how, so where it comes to like peer helpers and peer advocates, they will do other programming and we will count that under utilizations. And typically this is a sort of a running list for the year. You'll see peer helpers and, again, I don't want to make you all suffer through all of this. For this year, the numbers are down in a lot of ways. There are programs that we're not able to run and where we weren't able to do them virtually, we had to find some other way to get them to operate. And we took, in some cases, the time that we weren't able to spend on one program and put more resources into another programming or other programming. We have been able to maintain, just to kind of go through some of this, there's your Girls United. There's the numbers on Girls United. That was a question about that. Roots, our new program, Valor. We've been able to maintain quite a bit going into the school for our health class collaborations, but not everything. And like last year, we basically lost all the programming we would have done in the spring. And we've been able to, with a lot of work, fit some of the things we would normally do into virtual classes this year. Again, these numbers reflect as they were of November. We've filled in some more numbers since then that you'll see in future reports. I'm going to stop sharing for a minute. Any questions on, and you have that director's report that was sent to all of you online, so you all have that. Any questions, at least in terms of the report itself?
Is there any way to pull out per school, like how many touches there were at Daniel Hand High School? Or is it just everything that Madison Youth Services does?
That's a great question. So how would we define touches? And is that like,
sorry, that's clinical term. I don't mean actually touching.
No.
I know you understand. Stop.
No. But I think like, so, we have, when we're running, in a typical year, we have staff going in and out of classrooms all the time. And so like, we could go back in previous years where we've got really solid data on a staff person that probably, was in front of every single student, at least lower middle school through high school. Not as much in the elementary schools because we don't do as much group programming there. And so like you'd be able to tease that data, you'd be able to tease some of that out if you went through the report and you added up all the places where we did more, more presentations, classroom presentations. We've been involved in assemblies, particularly at Daniel Hand and sometimes at Polson too. And we are primarily around what isn't happening, so we'll often have conversations with people at the schools, we're worried about vaping. Like when we started doing a lot of our vaping education, like Polson had somebody that they wanted and felt really comfortable with doing presentations in assembly. So we didn't need to do that, which we were fine. Like that's, we don't have a lot of staff. So it's always a question of where we move a resource to do those things. So if there's something happening at that school, then and it's filling a need, that's great. Like we're good with that. you know, we're so grateful for the Wellness Wednesdays taking off as it is, and I realize it could be something different, maybe more, maybe less, depending on who you talk to. But that's programming that the school has picked up and is running pretty well, not perfectly. And, you know, it's hard to say exactly what everybody needs during the pandemic. But that's not something we have to drive or run because it's occurring in the schools. And we have student groups that are giving feedback on how that's doing. That's part of what Valor is going to be doing with Mr. Salutari at some point. So it does matter to me and to the youth services, and quite frankly, all of your jobs. If you're looking at the data and you feel like something needs to be clear or something would be better to tell the story, that would be good feedback for us. And I'm never, you know, we are never closed to that. That is actually part of all of your jobs as part of the advisory committee. So if there isn't something that you feel like you can tease out of our director's report or out of these meetings, you need to tell us. Whether that's email, whether that's, you know, when we have conversations like this in the board meeting, we really want to know. And one last thing. So what we started doing, and I think I had touched on this in an earlier board meeting. So
Scott, are you done with the physical report?
The director's report?
Yeah.
Yeah, I
had a question on that first.
Yeah, go ahead, please. I'm sorry.
Who do you think is the primary client of that report?
So that's a good question. So it's a director's report that is, and it's we carry that under our board. So that really is for you all. So it's a public document. So when we set up the meetings, this is attached to our agenda and is a part of any town record as well.
So I wonder if we shouldn't set aside some time at some point to talk about what data is maybe the board is not receiving that they would like to see, what's on that report that we'd like to see in a different form. Like what would help us if we're the primary clients of it. And if I have to assume that it's not being as widely read as it's intended to be read. And that maybe if we transformed it and gave you some feedback on what would be helpful to us, that might get it read a little bit more and maybe it'd be more useful to us.
Yeah. And I also point out that I did the director's report for years now, Molly does it, but a lot of the data we also use for that state report that we do. So.
Oh, she froze.
She did.
She's just going to.
We can add things to it, or still we'd still have to capture it for the state report.
Understood. Okay.
And I will share with you all. So our grants were administered under the State Department of Education. It switched to now under the Department of Children and Family Services, and that's now 2 years old. With the pandemic, there's continuing dialogue about what data DCF will want YSBs to collect across the state. So Madison Youth and Family Services is the official YSB for Youth Service Bureau for Madison. There's 102 within the Connecticut Youth Services Association. The grant basically gets administered through DCF and through CYSA to a large degree and into the individual YSBs. So what I'm saying is the state will tell us what data that they want us to collect, and we'll need to do that in order to maintain certain grants and standing with CYSA. While we're still in this sort of gap before they're clear on that, we are, as a part of CYSA, we are trying to develop our own data systems that we like, that tell the story of YSBs. That'll have an implication for us. And I'm fortunate because I have a seat at that table. I'm a part of the executive committee at CYSA. So I kind of know where that's going, and I'm very optimistic on that and hope that we can kind of get that work done before DCF decides. And nothing against DCF, John. But before they have an idea of something that maybe we don't think tells enough of the story for us. I know I'm doing a lengthy report tonight. I got one more thing I just want to share. Did I talk about lifelines with you all a couple of months ago? You remember that term coming up? Okay, so we know one piece of data that we've known for years, but couldn't think of a way to capture it. More than on occasion, when we're intervening on a crisis, it comes to our attention through a youth, a student usually. And it was something that we knew was happening, you know, so for example, you'd have a peer helper at the middle school, and peer helpers are, they're great. They're like little armies. And when they're aware or concerned about a student, they will work very quickly to either, you know, inform an adult about that student, or in some cases, walk, not drag, but, you know, walk that student to the attention of a counselor, whether it's our counselor or somebody in the building. Peer advocates are very well known to do this. And that's what those programs do. They train our youth to intervene and support their peers. In many cases, these were really critical roles because oftentimes it's the youth that are aware that somebody is struggling. And we didn't really have a great way to capture that. And as we've been asked, you know, like, what's the benefit of the services that we do? What's the necessity of our services? This is one piece that I felt was extremely important to start to bring into focus and define. So what we've done, let me just find this particular, nope. There we go. All right, so we developed this method. So this is a form that our staff can fill out at any time, and it defines what a lifeline is, and that is a youth that has intervened in a positive way to support, guide, or protect the safety of another peer or peers. By definition, this young person has utilized the skills that they have learned through MYFS training programs such as peer advocates and peer helpers, and or makes use of their connection with another MYFS program or service in order to intervene. So you wouldn't have to be necessarily trained in our programs. If you are connected to one of our staff and you use that connection to, if a student used that connection to connect another student, that would count as a lifeline. And so this form is to be completed by an MYF staff member to document any such occurrence at the point they become aware. And that's critical. Like when we struggled through, like, how do we count this? You know, sometimes a student might be telling us what they were aware of that happened last month, you know, that they brought someone to someone's attention that maybe we didn't know about. So we would want to count that. If a peer helper helped somebody a month, it doesn't matter. It was a month ago. We want to be able to show that. So, and just a quick look at what this is. These are the areas. So we would do this by staff, the date of the report, the areas in which it came to us. So our clinical services, this SBC is the school-based clinicians, OC would be our outpatient clinicians, our parent support counselor, our PYD, that's our prevention staff, and MAID, social services. And we do have an after-hour cell phone. And sometimes, you know, and it's happened plenty of times where we've had students call our after hours phone to report they saw something. It's usually the online that, you know, they'll say, you know, I saw a text or a post on Instagram or somewhere of somebody that might be in crisis, and we act at that point. So we do ask people to identify if this was a youth that's trained by us, which program that helps us to collect data on the program itself. If it's a youth that's involved with our support that wasn't trained, yes or no. And this is a key piece too, the level of urgency. So, you know, these are not always crisis situations. These are sometimes, you know, youth that are maybe supporting their friend or their peer over a long period of time, providing them support and guidance. Sometimes that's to get them to an adult. Sometimes it just might be, you know, your friend is parents got divorced, your family's going through a really tough time, and they've provided help through that period. So, you know, that's crucial. Anybody who knows a kid who's gone through, you know, something that's been very traumatic for them, support can come from anywhere, and it's quite critical. We collect if there's other names involved, if there's any staff directly involved, and then, you know, some lines so people can fill in some other kind of more anecdotal data. So if you remember back on that director's report, we are now showing lifelines. And as of November, I think there were 3 peer helper lifelines that we were able to record and 2 peer advocate lifelines. I'm going to tell you, I have no idea what the right number of lifelines there should be. I hope there's a lot, because that would certainly show the program working. That would also, I guess, indicate that there's a lot of things that kids are intervening on. So I'm not sure, that it's a good thing that we have lots of people reporting lifelines. That being said, it's new. It's something we're doing this year. So it'll be a statistic that we will see how it goes and track it over the next couple of years. We've also changed up how we count a lot of our outreach cases. In the past, we've had like monthly reports that people would fill out. It was sometimes an issue where, you couldn't count how many people were actually without duplicating them. Since these were monthly reports, you could have somebody who received what we call the short-term intervention multiple times throughout the year, but it wasn't easy for us to track that wasn't duplicating a particular family or student. So we've changed that up, and you'll see the term outreach being used in our director's report as opposed to short-term intervention. And again, credit to Sharon and Molly who take that information so we no longer can duplicate it and track it on a spreadsheet. And we're tracking the number of hours, we're tracking what we're doing to intervene. And there'll be an issue of apples to oranges on some of the data points between this year and last year, but we'll have all apples and all oranges going forward. Not to throw in the fruit thing, but just in case that made sense to people. Questions, thoughts on that?
Scott, the form, what do you do with it after it's been turned in?
So the paper forms are kept in a locked file since they all have sensitive data, particularly if there's something that was, would fall under our behavioral health services, our clinical services. Those are all be considered confidential. Like the Lifeline form, we would consider that a confidential form, so that's kept under a lock and key here. And then it would be fried. I always use that.
Shredded.
Thank you. I always fried. Never mind. So per the state standard, shredded after 7 years.
Okay. So, but you don't develop a file on the kid that the peer has brought forward. It's just an informational piece. I'm not really following the.
Yes. Okay. So where we define outreach, we keep that. We keep a form on the outreach. So we are identifying a youth name. And if it was a call-in, we would collect the parent. And this is, as it's outreach, it's really information that we're using, to stay informed and stay in touch with that person over a period of time. So it's kept confidential. It's the only people that would have access to the form would be our clinical staff. And at the point, if it didn't become, so let's say that we were doing outreach with somebody who didn't have a formal connection with us yet. If they wanted like formal clinical services, then there would be more of an official piece to that. So if they would have to sign consents for treatment. Their parents would have to sign consents for them to be treated, and then it becomes a formal case.
Okay, thank you.
You're using this form to track successes from your mentoring programs more than you are to track the actual service that you're.
Correct. Yeah. The Lifeline. I can again not to torture you people with the forms that we're doing. We have an outreach form that our staff fill out. That's separate. That's
okay.
That's the information, and a good point. So like our staff, that's the first thing that really, aside from providing whatever service the person needed, and addressing if it was a crisis, they would fill out the outreach form and collect some information that way. And that might be all the information. Sometimes you only interact with somebody for a very brief period of time, so the only information we would have is what we collected through that process. If there was a peer advocate involved with it, we would collect that on the Lifeline form. So that's really around the Lifeline itself. without really a lot of other identifying information going on, that for the peer that they helped.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Absolutely.
a lot. Yeah, thank you.
Go ahead.
No.
So with that, and if anybody has any other, we do have a section on the agenda tonight for the board to chime in. If anyone has any other questions that they think of between here and there, use that. And thank you all.
Thank you, Scott. At this point, the two candidates we had from the other two boards have conveniently dropped off the phone call. So that leaves Jeremy. Are you up to a liaison report? Even a brief one? Well, we'll see if we're putting him on the spot.
Sorry about that. Just had to put my 3-year-old to bed. Sorry.
No worries. And if it's not a good time, that's acceptable too.
No, I'm sorry. She just fell asleep on the couch with me, so I just ran her to her bed. Can you guys just repeat the question again? I'm sorry.
Yeah, the question is simple. Do you mind giving us a quick liaison report? It can be as brief as you like.
Just the biggest thing was that we all got vaccinated who wanted to get vaccinated. I just got my second shot on Saturday and feeling fine, and everything was a little sluggish on Sunday, but most of the department got vaccinated. So we're very excited about that, to be able to get that done.
That's awesome.
Yep. So we went through that, and no, there's really not much to report. Like I said last time, we were going through our accreditation process with Kalia. Now we're going to go through the accreditation process with getting our state accreditation with the state of Connecticut. And that's pretty much it. We just got a new order of jackets that the chief purchased for all the officers, because the new law with the police accountability bill, where you need to have your name badge and your name tag where you can easily identify the officer. So now you'll see us all wearing with our jackets on. Well, you could clearly see our name, which conforms with state law. But yeah, other than that, there's not really much to report on.
All right. Well, I appreciate you finding some time to do that. So thank you.
No problem. Sorry about that, guys.
Not at all. We're barely waiting. I don't have any noteworthy chairperson comments to make tonight. So I'm gonna, in the interest of time, just move on to the next section, which is an open discussion. So if any board members have any thing they want to report on, anything they want to share, or any questions they have for any other board members or for Scott or for any of the people on the call today, this would be a great time to ask or to participate. John.
I want to bring it back to the director's report, and specifically in the new referrals data. I noticed that one of the outliers was substance abuse related, and I'm just curious if you had any thoughts on that. Those numbers seem to be significantly lower. And I'm just curious, is that something that maybe the referrals are coming in and then being directed to other agencies because Youth and Family Services isn't providing those specific services? Or are they just in total lower reports? And is that really indicative of some of the issues that we're seeing in the community?
So great question, John. For this, looking at the number, there's a couple of things. First of all, we don't do specific substance abuse treatment. We do wind up doing assessments and intervening with youth and sometimes parents of youth that are concerned about substance abuse in its earlier stages. And there are times where we're working with kids where it's part of what's going on, but not the primary reason why they got referred. It's interesting because it doesn't show up here. It probably is an issue for a good amount of our teenage referrals, whether it's a concern or a risk factor, but not the primary thing. And just in terms of so if we did have a referral that came in for primarily for substance abuse treatment, we are probably referring that one to someone like Project Courage in Old Saybrook. who specializes in adolescent substance abuse treatment. There's a handful of providers around, individual providers and agencies, programs, some IOPs, PHPs that also provide that.
Am I correct in assuming that because school's not in person as much and there's no sporting events and that kids aren't getting caught on school grounds, that would be part of the reason why there's less referrals, Scott?
You know, I'm really worried about the substance abuse numbers. They're so hard to tell. You know, I think what you're bringing up is a good point. If they're not, you know, if they're not around peers as much in places where they may get caught, you know, that maybe that's going to, you know, depress some of those numbers. You know, one thing with the vaping that's interesting, you know, since the laws have changed, that's become less of a concern, at least outwardly. But I don't think kids are vaping less. And I think the kids who started vaping, there's probably a good number of them that are continuing with that behavior. For one, because it's nicotine and it's very addictive, and also it's easy to get. I'm obviously very concerned about what's going to happen with the marijuana legalization as well, because that could change quite a bit. Does that answer your question, Sarah?
I'm wondering if Darian has any perception on that.
I would actually agree with that. Like I would say the numbers are a lot lower than I think we would think. I do think that from like a younger age to high school, people, I think that I have seen like a lot less vaping, but I think that especially with a lot of people being isolated and their only form of communication being via Zoom or via Google Meet, that they may have turned back to that way, but there's no way of truly knowing that.
Kids are really in such isolation now.
Yeah.
And again, with the marijuana products being, you know, you can easily accessible vaping, THC products, edibles, you know, and I'm aware of a few youth that I'm currently working with, you know, that it's an issue, you know, that they didn't come here because of that, but they are turning to substances and they can get their hands on them very easily and hide them well. And we may find out, again, like with everything with the pandemic, when we go back to normal, I think we're going to learn a lot more about what's truly been going on. And that's a little frightening as well.
We feel that way from an education point of view too, just so you know, like we don't know what next year and the year after are going to be like because of, you know, what experience the kids are getting. We believe we're all doing the best we can, but the best we can is not even near what it was in the old days. So.
You are doing the very best that you can. So I thank you for that. Actually,
Well,
piggybacking on that question, I know you asked Darian his perception of Wellness Wednesdays. I'd love to hear your viewpoint as a teacher in the school and how you feel like, obviously I can get it from my kid, but I'm curious to hear as a teacher and educator how you feel like it's going. And obviously you see it for both sides of the alphabet and if there's any differences between them.
All right, that's a tough question to answer while the Zoom cameras are rolling, but I'll do my best. Yeah, it hasn't been, I don't believe it's been an even split alphabetically. So that's first of all, and I can't do anything about that. That's the way the schedule is worked, and you have to assume that over the long haul, hopefully it will even out. But it has been lopsided to one side, and please don't ask me which side, but I think it's the lower alphabet. I think it's cohort A that's been in on Wednesdays more than cohort B at this point. So personally, I'm a huge fan of the concept of Wellness Wednesday. I think I said that perfectly. I think it should continue beyond. I think it should continue beyond a pandemic. I think the concept of 30 minutes of peer socializing and bonding with each other, with teachers, with administrators, I think it's a great concept. I think it changes the mood in the building. I think it's a wonderful idea. I have concerns about it during a pandemic. I think some of the things that Darian thinks are incredibly cool about it, I find incredibly troubling about it. And, you know, so that's, you know, that we encourage folks to have masks on 24/7 in our building, but not when they're drinking beverages in the halls during Wellness Wednesday. So I'm out there, I'm the jerk out there in the halls telling kids to go somewhere else. Don't be walking down the hall with your mask off while they have a cup that they were given, or, you know, a biscuit that they were given. So I think it's a wonderful thing. I think it's something that it's a tiny little bit of a break that we can give during this incredibly stressful, anxiety-inducing time. I'd like to see more social distancing during it personally, and I think that's very, very, very difficult for us to do.
Okay, that makes sense. And Scott, just piggybacking off of that, David spoke a lot about, you know, continuing it after the pandemic. And certainly I've heard a lot of positive feedback as well. Is that something you and Mr. Salutary are talking about? You know, who knows what the fall will look like, right? I mean, I hope all the kids can be back at the high school, but we just don't know. Today, we can't say for sure that will happen. But when it's over, whenever that is, do you think this concept of Wellness Wednesdays will stick?
I don't know. You know, I'm a big believer in the social emotional support, the programs, you know, integrating them as much into the school day as possible. We are in regular conversations, not just with TJ, but director of special ed, superintendent, you know, assistant superintendent, the child wellness committee that has formed over the last couple of years. So like we're going to constantly promote all aspects of that. And whether it's a Wellness Wednesday or, you know, if we're up to me, like you'd have a wellness hour, you know, every day, and have that integrated somewhere into their classrooms. How you do that, you know, because there are some teachers that maybe could do that themselves, and some classes where that would be very appropriate, and then other places where it may not be. And the days, I mean, the challenge really is that there's so much packed into a school day, and there's so many requirements. It's, you know, I think everyone would agree to have a wellness component every day is a good idea, but where you would put it and what you would sacrifice in order to have that, and then how it's experienced by each student. Because I would tell you there were students that would think meditation for 15 minutes is a really good wellness thing to do. There are other students that would tell you they just want to go eat a sandwich, and that's the best thing that they can do in the entire day. And it, you know, we wouldn't argue with anyone, especially if it's a really good sandwich, you know, that's necessarily wrong. So.
No, I agree. And I think piggybacking on the, we just don't know what we're going to find when this is all over component. I think it's important to continue those conversations. So I guess any way we can support you in that endeavor. I know for my son, it's probably the only, and I hear what you're saying, David, about the mask, but it's the only social interaction that my kid has had potentially in a year. So it's just something to think about.
I don't begrudge them.
No, I know.
It
makes me nervous too when he tells me what he did, but at the same time, like he feels so normal, right?
And we need that. We really need a little bit, and so we, you know, I'll go outside if there's no snow on the track. I'll go outside and I'll let the kids have this. No, and I mean it. I've walked a mile and a half during the 30 minutes. It's nice. I get outside.
It's just laughing at the snow.
Yeah. You know, that's okay. Maybe tomorrow in the snow. We'll see. And tomorrow's a long one, and I think, Darian, there is programming for you. So I think the seniors are going to have some programming tomorrow, and from what I understand, it's worthwhile, and you'll get something out of it that'll be positive.
I would say too, David, that a lot of the teachers, somebody mentioned I think Scott said some of the teachers could probably do it on their own, but just being at home working and hearing, I listen to make sure that he's not being ridiculous.
No, I met him the other day. He's a great boy. I finally got to meet him. Yeah.
He tells me that all the time. He's so great everywhere else. Anyway, but listening, I know that there are teachers who will give the kids 10 minutes at the end of class or something to, you know, go read something, go get a drink, you know, do what you got to do. The lesson, you know, you can finish this after you've taken a quick 10 or 15 minutes. You know, in the beginning, I was yelling at my kid, like, you know, are you ever going to be in school, or are you just like making smoothies? What is this? But then it started clicking what the teachers were doing, because it's a lot of computer time.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. And, you know, there are times we let them go early when they're on the phone. There are times we don't. And some teachers do it more than others. And I think everybody's trying to deal with it and find a way that works. All of us, I would like to say that all of us are acting with an understanding that we've simplified the classes in a lot of ways. And it may not be in time, maybe it's in homework, maybe it's in something else. But most teachers that I've spoken with have done something to. We really believe we're not anywhere near the intensity that we are in a normal situation. It doesn't mean that the students aren't feeling as much stress and certainly as much anxiety as they do in a normal time, but that's a lot of that's beyond what we can do.
I just want to share really quickly. So I think, you know, the individual experience of students is really important to kind of keep that in mind. And so again, for the students that I interact with, you know, they have teachers and classes where they know that, you know, that there's some more flexibility in doing their work, and they use that flexibility for the classes where they feel like they don't. And it's really remarkable if you're able to peel away a lot of the worry and shades of, and layers of concern that we all have. You know, kids are really quite remarkable. And when we, you know, kind of reinforce that and understand that what they're doing is coping and trying to survive. A wonderful conversation with a teenager today, and he was talking about, in all honesty, there are classes like he will completely shut off, like he'll mute the teacher at times because he feels overwhelmed. But is still able to get his work done and his grades okay, and he's balancing that with other classes that he's needing to spend more time or understand better. And you know, it was pretty remarkable. I found myself just sitting back and listening to how he was managing it, and it was pretty amazing. Sarah, I'm sorry I cut you off, but go ahead.
No, it's okay. I think that, you know, I think this is really individual per teacher and per student. I have one kid that's in a lot of AP classes and one kid that's not. And the amount of workload for the juniors and seniors that are taking AP courses right now is absolutely astronomical. And some of these kids are still staying up till 2, 3 in the morning to do their work. And, you know, then there's other students that can manage it very well. So I think that's a whole gamut of how much work is going on and how much stress they're under.
Fair enough.
I would like to say, I think the teachers have done a great job of being mindful of the students, and like, especially as the year has gone on, of like being mindful of how much time they are spending on a screen, how much work they do have, how much stress they have on their shoulders. I think that at least my teacher has been very mindful of that.
Appreciate that. Anybody else have any comments or questions as we're sitting here staring at screens?
I just had one other thing with the vaping and the substance abuse. You know, with a lot of parents not around and students being home remote, it tends to be a lot quieter and simpler to do those things, because now they don't have to hide them. They don't have to carry them. They don't have to transport them. It's there and nobody else is around. So, I mean, I know in talking with parents in my kids' grade level, there's a lot of things being found in homes, you know, and I'm not saying that the kids are using, they're not going deep on it, but you know, you get the comment, oh, I just like to relax a little bit with it. Okay, what do you need to relax for? What's the issue that made you feel like you needed to relax? You know, let's talk about that a little bit. And that's a conversation that's been going on with quite a few people that I've just run into and talked about it with. Yeah, I found something in his room as well. And you know, yeah, he's grounded for a week. And, you know, but what's the answer? I mean, it's hard because I remember being 15, 16, 17 years old and having things to do and getting involved in those things sometimes because it seemed like the right thing at that. But when you're at home with not a damn thing to do, it's more attractive when somebody says, you know what, you can get out of your room for a little while without getting out of your room. You know, they hit this little thing and watch some Star Wars for 7 hours. You'll be okay. I hear this from multiple people. So I don't know that because it's not being reported that it ain't happening, or it's not happening at an alarming level that we're going to find out about later.
I worry about that too. And I think you're right. And access to the, particularly to marijuana products is much greater than it's been in recent years. You know, that it's legal in states surrounding Connecticut, that you can get it online. And it's, I mean, at this point, to be honest, like when it comes to the legalization of it in Connecticut, which is a very good chance that that's going to happen, if not this year, very soon. I don't know that you'll see the numbers changing, you know, because of that. But they're not going to go down. I mean, they can only go up from there because the promotion and the accessibility will be much more increased. And it's already a problem. It's already, for exactly the reasons you said, for people without a lot of other good options, or what they would, you know, talk about as more typical options. And it does take the conversation, you know, so like, what else can you do to feel better? You know, what is driving that feeling that you have? And so often it's boredom. It's not, you know, in some cases it's being overwhelmed in what you're doing and not seeing other options. You know, being in a class that's expecting a lot of information from you, a lot of work and performance, without, you know, and not feeling like you have any option to change that for whatever reason. So we're worried, and I think we all should be worried and paying attention. And, you know, again, I think that's, we would welcome parents calling in to troubleshoot those things, because we do that here.
Yeah, but that leads into that second piece, Scott, is that if they're not around and they're not, you know, no, I'm not saying this for anybody else or myself either, but you know, there are parents who relied on the system to pay attention for them because they were out earning a living. They were both working in that household. They didn't have the time to watch. They expected you people out there to kind of let me know if there's a problem, because I'm not seeing it, you know, when I'm at home, he's perfect. But I'm not at home for 8 to 9 to 10 hours a day is what you hear a lot. You know, what do you expect me to do? I'm at the office from 8 in the morning till 7 o'clock at night. I don't know what the hell he's doing at that. I think he's going to school. I mean, and it's a terrible thing, but you can't change everything to meet that need. And sometimes that support that you were relying on before, now that you don't have it, you're still blind to the what's going on, you know. So it'll be interesting to see down the road what numbers get generated after all this. I mean, there's going to be a lot of numbers. I know that.
There's going to be a lot of numbers. There's, you know, and I don't want to keep belaboring the point, but there's no interaction. There's minimal interaction inside the classroom. And I mean, there's a little bit of math interaction in my math classroom or whatever, but there aren't kids sitting next to kids talking to each other. There's no social interaction. I have 4 girls that in one of my classes that actually interact with each other, and you hear them giggling and you hear them talking, and it feels so weird because there's 4 kids out of my entire caseload that actually interact in that kind of way, which is a normal thing to see in a high school. So I worry about little things like that, Robert. You know, like, where's the social interaction, those little nuanced conversations that kids have and develop relationships and kind of grow up, and all that stuff is missing from the classroom, and it has been for, you know, for almost going on a year now. So yeah, there's no doubt that we're going to be picking up the pieces, these little subtle pieces that we don't see as obviously as, oh yeah, they don't know how to add, you know, or solve an equation. We're going to see these little subtle pieces for years. So I'm going to move us along because Darian's been staring at a monitor for so long today, and he should not be. Assuming that there's nothing else pressing at this point, I'm going to, I don't remember anymore. It's been so long since we've done this. Do I need a motion to adjourn? Or we've finished all the items on the agenda. So I believe it's, at this point, I can call the meeting adjourned. We'll see you guys next month. Have a great month, and we'll see you back here.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, David.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Scott.
Thanks, Scott.
Good evening, everyone. Be safe.